We're going on an excursion to pick up the sips for the yurt. Tell me about how the foaming went yesterday.
It was yucky.
Welcome back to our off-grid home build. At the end of our last episode, Charles had just completed the walkway around the perimeter of our future yurt, and we were waiting for our custom-made structural insulated panels, or SIPs, to go under the future floor. While we were waiting, we worked a bit on the never-ending task of getting our water system underground. Good afternoon. It's late September and fall has come to Vermont, not just officially, but the weather has turned as well. Over my shoulder you can see our brand new pile of work. I've almost lost track, but I think this is number 9. It's the second one of the new type of fill. I continued to move fill with shovels and buckets up to the top of the cistern mountain, and Charles used the wheelbarrow to mound up an extra layer of earth on top of the plumbing. Then, finally, we heard the good news that our floor panels were ready for us. Good morning! We're going on an excursion today to pick up the sips for the yurt, which are finally done. And if the weather cooperates, we'll do a little bit of sightseeing on the way. So our sips are actually so big that we can't bring them home on the trailer that we've been borrowing for weeks. So we have stopped by our contractor's house to borrow a bigger trailer that can carry home the sips. We heard good things from a neighbor about a place called Warren Falls, so we planned a scenic detour into our trip and got an early start. We've read that this park is a popular swimming hole, but I'm afraid swimming season is over for this year. It's the end of September now, and the leaves have just started to change. Even on a soggy day, this waterfall is a beautiful place for taking pictures and chasing frogs. There he goes.
Turn right, then arrive at your destination.
I knew we were here to pick up a large load, and Charles had done the actual math to figure out whether it would fit on the trailer. But as our valuable packages were piled higher and higher, we both started to get a bit nervous about the long and winding drive home. And with rain in the forecast this evening, Charles had brought a huge tarp to keep the sips dry. We had to stop a few times along the way to check the ratchet straps and reinforce the corners of the tarp where the sharp edges of the panels had poked through. But we did make it back with our precious load intact. Our next challenge would be unloading the heavy panels.
We got our Yurt SIP flooring system back. Still on the trailer, I got it all uncovered. Getting ready to cut it loose and start putting it down on the frame. SIPs are structurally insulated panels. They're basically a sandwich of plywood OSB with foam in the middle, which you can see here. And that's what's going to be our floor structure.
And why did we choose to use SIPs for this particular application, given they're so expensive?
Mainly for their insulation value, but I'm also putting a floor on top of the SIPs to do a radiant floor heat, and we want a good insulated floor underneath the radiant floor heat to keep the heat in.
And how do you attach them to the floor?
They're attached with 9-inch screws that go all the way through them into the structure, and then you put splines in the edges of some of them to hold them together. And then you go back, when it's all put down, you go back and drill holes every 6 inches at the joints, and you spray foam into the joints.
And how much do these panels weigh?
4 pounds a square foot. So they vary. The heaviest one's a little less than 200 pounds. And I brought in a neighbor of ours. Hi. This is my friend Graham from down the hill. He's going to be helping me unload the panels. This is number 2. It's going to go down over there. Okay. All right, so we've got all the SIPs off the trailer now. Thank you, neighbor. Center section is in place, just about ready to be screwed down. But I've got to get my trailer back. Hopefully we'll have this deck done today. The SIP flooring is in place anyway and secured. It doesn't have all the screws in it needs, but it's taken my neighbor and I, it took a couple hours to get unloaded and get the part of the center row put in. And then it took me maybe 2 hours all by myself to get everything wrestled into place and secured down. And then it's looking a lot like rain, so I'm going to stop now and get a tarp over it. We don't want this to get wet.
So show me what you've done.
I've got that half of the SIPs all secured and screwed down, completed. And today I'm going to work on this half. We've got these splines I've got to cut off to length. These are what join the two SIP panels together. And they have to be screwed together, and then screw them all down from the top. And then I've got to foam all these. I've got drill holes. Every 6 inches here at each joint, and foam. There's a joint in between each of these that you spray expanding foam in there, and it fills it all in and makes it basically monolithic. So that's where we get the grade R value. And then once the foam is in and dry, I will start putting a plywood top on this for our radiant floor heat.
We've been tarping pile of work number 9 so that we can still work with it after the rainstorm. It's been working pretty well so far, but there are some things that I wanted to show you. If you've been watching for a while, you might remember that this area was Dharma's sandbox for a while, and he was happily running around. But now that this is a giant cliff, he's not encouraged to come in this area. Should he tumble off that cliff, he's likely to need a trip to the animal hospital. So, what I wanted to show you is that somebody much more sure-footed and longer-legged than Dharma has been turning this into their sand castle. Looks like maybe one of our resident coyotes, or possibly a neighbor dog, has been having a grand old time playing King of the Hill on our cistern mountain. So, tell me about how the foaming went yesterday.
It was yucky. It's just yucky to mess with and hard to work with. And yeah, the temperature was falling. It fell lower than they say to apply it, but everything seemed to have worked okay. It was warm when I started. It was probably 70 degrees. The cans were 70 degrees when I started. And they're not going to change temperature that fast. I am caulking all the seams that are too narrow to put foam in, just to keep the airflow from coming through.
So these pieces of plywood are for the radiant floor heat. They'll go directly on top of the SIPs, and then Charles is planning to route grooves in them for the tubing of the radiant floor heat. And we hope you will join us for that project in our next episode.